Always 100%. What does that mean to you if you get 100% on a test? Are you a unicorn or is that a carrot? Okay. I don't know what an Olaf is. Oh, okay. Was I supposed to know Olaf? My granddaughter knows Moana. She probably knows Olaf too. You get 100% on your midterm. Does that mean you know everything? It means you scored perfection on that test. So 100% here is not a quantity. It's a statement of perfection. So this means that this law of life that runs your body knows what your body needs at all times and will endeavor to make that happen. Now, where would you come in as a chiropractor? Why is it in the corner? There we go. Look over here at the TV. This thing is driving me nuts. Okay. You'll be at least able to hear it. That's more important. Why would a subluxation be bad for this innate intelligence?
Can't get the signals out to correct when it needs to be.
Signal can't get where it's intended to go. That's where you really come into play in somebody's health care. If you recognize the body has an ability to heal itself, where does that ability come from? Where does that ability get transmitted to? How does it get from point A to point B? Science tells us the nervous system is the master control system of the body. It coordinates all the body parts. So we need this information that's in the nervous system to be able to get through unimpeded, without any interference, without any speed bumps, without any roadblocks. All right, so that's why the subluxation is going to be bad, and we'll get to that. I jumped ahead of that last time too quickly. It's the same in each one of you, and it's the same as you as it is in an amoeba. So you have the same amount of innate intelligence as the person sitting next to you. You have the same innate intelligence as you had when you were born as a baby. 100%. Perfection. You have the same as an amoeba. Why would we say an amoeba has an innate intelligence? It's a living organism. It's living, biological, organic life. Something makes it tick. Something makes it happen. How about the oak tree? Same thing. But they don't have nervous systems. No, they're not as complex of a life form as a human being or another vertebrate. So there must be some other way that it operates, but that principle would still have to be present. What about comparing your innate intelligence, or the innate intelligence operating in your body, because it's not really something you own, compared to the innate intelligence that operates in the body of a person with Down syndrome? Would you say they have less than perfect innate intelligence? Because they have Down syndrome? Or cerebral palsy? Okay, the innate intelligence is still 100%. That's our basic starting assumption. But the way it's expressed is different, and there's going to be reasons why it's expressed differently. In a Down syndrome person, what's their problem? trisomy 21. The 21st pair of chromosomes, instead of having 2 bits, has 3. And a chromosome is matter. Right? Skin, bones, stuff you can touch. A chromosome is matter. So the problem there is in the matter, not in the intelligence. A person with cerebral palsy has all the same parts you have, but there's been damage to the parts. They have the same 100% perfect innate intelligence, but it's expressed differently because the matter has been compromised. The body parts have been compromised. The job of innate intelligence is to adapt you for survival. Okay, last week we put 5 signs of life on the board. Who remembers them? Adaptability is one. And there you have it. What's another one? Growth? Elimination or excretion? Reproduction? And assimilation. Got to bring the nutrients and the stuff in. Adaptation is key. You help all of that because you're helping life when you adjust nerve interference, called subluxation. But how do we adapt matter for survival? That's what you're going to study when you study biochemistry next quarter. You're going to learn this big complex cycles, and it tells you bit by bit how the body is changing. That's governed by the innate intelligence of the body through chemical laws. So if we're talking about this innate intelligence, let's start at the basic unit of life, which biology tells us is the cell. If the amoeba has an innate intelligence, would it make sense that a kidney cell has innate intelligence? Yeah. Or a skin cell, or a bone cell. They have all the same parts. And cells come together to form tissues. Liver tissue. Skin tissue. We're going to do a skin graft. Bone tissue. And tissues come together to form organs. So we have innate intelligence operating at different levels of life. How do we know an organ has intelligence? Right now our organs are working, but we have innate intelligence in our body that's coordinating all our different body parts, all our different organs. Right? Just watched something on one of the news history, whatever shows the other night on TV, and this 21-year-old kid that was the mascot for UNC, for Carolina, was in a really bad car accident years ago, and he was an organ donor. And they were interviewing all the people whose lives were saved because of this one kid donating his organs. Right? One got a liver, one got a kidney, another one got the other kidney, one got the heart, somebody got the lungs, all of his major organs. That young man was declared dead. Well, then how could you use his organs in somebody else if he's dead? Was the organism dead, but the organs could have still had life? And if we can keep that organ alive until we get it to the recipient, then it can save that person's life. We cool it down, we put it on ice to slow metabolism down, right? So the organ can live longer, so chemical reactions don't go as quick. But what's making those chemical reactions, that metabolism take place in that heart, while it's being transported. There must be an intelligence in those organs. But then we got an issue, right? When we put it into the recipient, what does the recipient's body recognize about that transplanted organ? It's foreign. What do we have to do? We have to give anti-rejection drugs so the body can't reject it, because it recognizes it as being different matter that it can't incorporate, but it's still coordinating, right? It's like taking out a bad saxophone player from the symphony, putting in a new saxophone player. The conductor is now going to organize and coordinate him with the rest of the symphony. There's no rejection there by the other players, hopefully, the other musicians. But we've just put something new to that, and now it's got to be put in sync with everything else. And that's what the innate intelligence of the body will do. At some level, and you get organs come together in systems, at some level we get to the innate intelligence of the body, whose job is to coordinate all parts of the body for the mutual benefit of all the other parts. Why is it important to break down the hard-boiled egg you had for breakfast? Who's going to benefit from that? Which part of your body benefits from what you had for breakfast? The whole body, right? It's going to break that down, secrete enzymes from the pancreas into the digestive tract to break it down for the benefit of the whole body. That's the job of the innate intelligence. That's how adaptation occurs. By what's coming at it from inside, what's coming at it from outside. Harvard Medical School, Richard Cabot. The wisdom of the body is responsible for 90% of the hope of patients to recover. The body has a super wisdom, is in favor of life rather than death. This is the power that we depend on for life. All doctors are responsible for letting their patients know this great force is working within them. That's not said by a chiropractor, but that's something that we all talk about if you understand the law of life. I don't know that all medical doctors do what he says they should do and tell them, look, your body is amazing and it's trying to heal this situation. But if you see it that way, you should be telling people that. That's empowering, don't you think? When you can tell them you have the ability to heal inside you already. Let's see what we can do to help that, make sure it's happening as best as possible. That's a lot better than going, oh, you're just a sorry sack of parts. There's really no hope for you, but I can fix you. What do you think people look for the most when they go to a doctor of any kind? Hope. Who said that? Hope. Yeah, they're not looking for science. They're not looking for scientific studies. They're looking for hope. Now, there's science that backs medicine up. There's science that backs chiropractic up, but they're looking for hope. They're looking for a doc who cares about them. So when you get adjusted, your subluxation gets adjusted, what does that do to your liver? It helps it get as close to possible as being 100% liver. Right? A liver with all its liverness. A kidney with all its kidneyness, getting all the impulses that it needs. You came in with headaches. Your chiropractor checked you for subluxation, found it, adjusted it. It benefited your kidneys. It benefited your spleen, your pancreas. It benefits every part of your body. Not just the thing that hurt. That's why you got to be careful that you don't fall into the trap of treating what hurts them, because you might miss the subluxation. The subluxation isn't always where it hurts. That's just where the smoke detector went off. The red light comes on the dashboard of your car, but that's not the problem, is it? That's just an indication of the problem. The problem could be at the rear tire, it could be in the engine. The smoke detector goes off in the hallway of your house. Does that mean that's where the fire is, or that's where it picked up the smoke? Okay. If I gave you a scale from your lab in college, and a ruler, and a rose, could you describe a rose? Could you tell me about the rose? Would you need any other tools to tell me about the rose? Sight? Smell? So if you took a sniff and you detected a particular aroma, you could try and describe that. Tell me the weight of it. You could count the petals. You could measure the size. Could you tell me everything about that rose? Yeah? No? Could you tell me something about the rose? Yeah, but not everything. What, for instance, any of you ladies like getting roses? Does that make you feel a certain way? Guys, giving roses make you feel a certain way? Other than you have less money in your pocket? Right? If the rose makes you feel a certain way, makes you feel special or loved, that's part of the rose. How do you measure that? I saw a news article the other day where somebody's making this fancy granola type thing, healthy snack. And on the ingredients list, it's a real environmental-centric, earthy-centric company. On the ingredients list, they listed love. It's made with love. What do you think the FDA told them? You can't put that on the label. When they said, it's a small company, it's not a big factory or something like that. But they said, but we add love in there when we make it. You can't add that because we can't measure it. But what if that's why Grandma's apple pie tastes so good? What if it's not just the ingredients? That's the vitalistic part of life. The fact that you go beyond the parts that are measurable. Right? You all have love for certain people in your life. Is that the same thing as saying, oh, I really love triple chocolate cake?
It might be.
It could be.
I really love triple chocolate cake.
Don't tell Mom that.
She knows.
Okay. She wants to be a little bit higher than that. Right? Different kinds of love, but yet it's still there. So the vitalistic thinker gets outside the mechanistic box. There will be a tendency for you to want to look for the evidence, because you grew up in a science-oriented world, and especially in healthcare, everybody's looking for evidence. We want to look for evidence in chiropractic as well, but we want it to be pertinent to subluxation. We don't necessarily want it to be relative to disease. We're more interested in the transmission, what's happening in the nervous system, than your condition. Because like I said, that bad back might be a really bad thing. It's really uncomfortable, but when you get adjusted, it's changing everything in your body. And we would like to find out what that is. From a chiropractic standpoint, death is when the innate intelligence of your body can no longer adapt your matter. Okay, so I gave you 5 signs of life. You actually had them already from bio. That was Principle 18. We covered innate intelligence. You can read more about that in your lexicon book or lexicon list. We talked about subluxation. These are principles. Now I'm talking about innate intelligence adapting matter. What do you know about this? Matter. Concrete? Touchable? Measurable? What do you know about intelligence? Is it concrete? Can you see it? Can you touch it? Can you measure it? No. That's abstract. Matter, concrete, intelligence, abstract. How are we going to connect those two things together? How do we take something that you can't see and touch and connect it to something that you can see and touch? We need a link. Force is the link. So would you say force is abstract or concrete? Abstract and concrete. The force is both. Intelligence is abstract. Matter is concrete. For instance, you thought about your wardrobe that was at home in the closet. You thought about what you wanted to wear today, but nobody could see what you were thinking, because that's in your abstract realm. But then you showed up at school with a certain wardrobe on, and everybody can see what you're wearing, because your clothes are matter. Your clothes are concrete. So now everybody can see what you were thinking. So what was the link in between thinking about it and putting it on? Or what you're wearing? The actual putting it on was the force. Okay? This is called the chiropractic triune. Principle 4, we'll talk about that. Intelligence, force, and matter. Where do you think the nervous system is in this picture? Okay, good. And what else? Where do you think the nervous system is in that picture? The nervous system is what the chiropractor says carries the force. In the early days of osteopathy, they said the force was carried through the blood and the lymph. Chiropractic said it was in the nerve. But they were both onto some vitalistic idea. So, this is why on Halloween you frequently see a lot of chiropractors dressing up as Yoda or the Jedi. Whoever's got that force, right? That's why in the 1980s the chiropractic students went crazy over Star Wars. The Force be with you. Right? You guys know that movie? You familiar with the Force? Okay. That was like getting no laughs at all. Okay? You need the force to be transmitted in order to be at 100%. The problem is if you've gone through 45 years of life and something was interfering with that force, what happened to your matter over those 45 years? It goes downhill. It degrades. So when should you start thinking about getting that force checked to make sure that it's not interfered with? Maybe when you're 35 or 25 or 5 years old or maybe at birth, and just watch it all the way through. It's a quality of life idea. Maintain the spinal column to allow that the transmission of force is getting through to the best of its ability. You can maximize your potential throughout your life. It's more about the quality of life that you can live than to how long you're going to live. So, we can no longer adapt your matter. The force is not getting through. That's when you're dead, when the innate intelligence can no longer adapt you. How long can you go without food before you die? Days? Many days? Several days? Weeks? How long can you go without water before you die? A few days. So maybe from weeks to days. How long can you go without air before you die?
60 seconds.
Minutes. Some longer than others. How long can you go without a nerve supply before you die? That's actually what we call death. You can't go without that. So what kind of life do you have if 90% of your electrical activity in your nervous system is getting through? Or less than 90%? That's not always measurable. And it certainly doesn't fit the standard research model in healthcare, which is why it's been hard to do any research on it, because the people given money for research are really only interested in studying diseases and conditions. What can you do for my XYZ? So we need to think differently, and we need to have that thinking affect our research if we're serious about what we do. And if we really get the big picture of what we do. Mentioned organ transplants. Some might say the fingers and hair continue to grow after death, but others will say that that's the receding of other tissues to make it look like the hair and the fingernails are growing. So that's a relative thing. What about the apple? This is a great time of year if you're up in the North Carolina mountains or in the Hudson Valley of New York, where I'm from. Right? Those apples are growing on the tree. You pick it off nice and juicy. Was that apple alive? What if that apple fell off the tree and was on the ground? What would happen to it? Starts to rot, starts to decay, because it is dead. Where was its life source? The tree. It's disconnected from the tree. So does that mean when you pull the apple off the tree, or down here, the peach, we even have the big water tower that looks like a peach, or something else? Right? If you pull the apple off the tree, is it living or dead when you eat it? Is it? Why are you eating something dead? Would you eat a potato chip? That's dead. Is the apple dead? When you buy it from the grocery store, is it dead? Where's the healthiest food in the grocery store? Around the outside. Shop around the outside. You'll be better off than shopping in the middle. My wife takes forever to get around the outside of the store. I make a beeline for the middle aisles. So you pick the apple, and it's still green. You pick the tomato from your garden, and it's still green. And you had fried green tomatoes yesterday, so you don't want them today. You put it on the windowsill in the kitchen. What happens to that green tomato? It ripens, so it must still be alive. It's no longer connected to the tree, the life of the organism, but it has its own organ intelligence. The organ is still alive, and it's continuing to do life. And then you eat it at just the right time, and it tastes really good. But if you don't, it will continue to process and die and then decay. And if the tomato or the apple decays enough, it's dead. Its elements go back into the earth. But what happened to that seed? That could give life to a new tomato plant or a new apple tree without you even trying. The acorn falls off the oak tree. That could go into the dirt and sprout a new oak tree. So there must have been life in the seed. And where did the seed come from? The dead fruit. That's why we think that there's life all the way down to the smallest particles. And we want to coordinate that life in human beings, and that's done through the nervous system. That's why we have jobs. And because of that, you look really, really good because people leave your office feeling better. The headache went away, the back pain went away, the sinuses cleared up, the stomach started to feel better. You look really good, but really all you did was wipe the mud off the windshield, and the body was able to work better. You adjusted the vertebra. Now life in the body happens better on many levels, and you get all the credit. You don't have to take that credit. say, no, Mr. Jones, it was your body that's doing the healing. And remind them again how amazing they are. Any questions here? Sometimes I go fast, and you guys are a real quiet crowd. Probably until after the midterm when you realize the test wasn't really that hard. When is the test? Monday. A localized protective response. Does that sound good? Why does that sound good? What's it doing for you? Why does this look like a good thing? What is it doing? Protecting. Elicited, caused by an injury or some destruction of tissue. So something happened to you that triggered this protective thing to happen. It destroys, dilutes, builds a wall around the thing that's going to hurt you. Just like your parents did when you were kids growing up, right? Put their arm around you when you're going into a dangerous situation. Keep the bad stuff away. Just like your dog might do if your dog is protecting you. My daughters were little, they go down the street riding their bikes, and the dog would constantly make circles around them as they were going down the street. She was protecting them. Right? And I like that about the dog. I didn't have to worry about where the kids were because the dog was with them. What does this look like? Yeah, that's the definition of inflammation. Did you know that, or is that in the notes? Okay. That's the definition of inflammation. So based on the medical definition of inflammation, which that is, would you say inflammation is a good thing or a bad thing? Looks like a good thing. Yet what's a very, very popular and common drug? Anti-inflammatories. We're now treating what the body is doing to try and make you better. That's allopathy. That's doing the opposite of what the body's trying to do. Now, there may be chronic situations that could become life-threatening to where you might want to do something about inflammation, particularly if it's in the lungs and you can't breathe. But we have to stop and think, critically think, why is this happening and is this good for the body? When you sprain an ankle and it swells, this is what's happening. That's not a bad thing. So far, legally, you can't prescribe drugs. You cannot prescribe an anti-inflammatory. You're not a medical doctor, you're a chiropractor. But how else can you address inflammation that might be legal for you? Pamphlets, or what could you give people as a treatment? Or what could you tell them to go home and do? If you wanted to treat the inflammation. Put ice on it. Right? The whole rice thing. Rest, ice, compress, elevate. You know, the guy who came up with that now says we shouldn't be icing. Because he realized it's kind of good for you to have that inflammation. Thinking with our brains, educated brains, to try and be in sync with what our body's innately doing. That's a huge challenge. Most people haven't been taught to do that. it's really cool when you can see somebody's eyes brighten up when you start to teach them some of this and they say, yeah, Doc, that makes sense. Now, last Thursday, did I mention that we weren't having class Friday and Monday? I didn't say Monday?
We waited.
I thought I told you 2 days. I apologize for that.
Makes sense though when you
Is 10 o'clock too early to have pizza?
never
I love
That's arbitrary, honestly.
If I could find somebody that could have pizzas made by that hour of the morning, that's hard to do for a good pizza place. I feel bad about making you come to class and forgetting to tell you to be here. I'd buy you pizza. I got to check with my pizza guy and see if he. That would. He's done this for me before because that's happened before. But usually the class had been at 11, and he can get them ready for me at 11. I don't think he.
I have to get a break.
You don't have class at 11?
I have to get a break.
Yeah, but you could always have time to eat pizza. You could get a couple slices and go do what you got to do. Okay, let me look in to see if I can do that before we finish the quarter out. Okay? No class tomorrow. See you Thursday. I'll be here Thursday and Friday.
The assignments.
Yes.